Okay.
And welcome back to Mixed Media Live. It is a happy Friday. So good Friday, everyone out there. Hope you had a good work week. We are here to talk about 3 brand new topics. Mixed Media is a weekly podcast happening every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is 4 p.m., I think, in Ben's time, if I did the math correctly. I hope everyone's ready for a good round of talking about art. That's what we do. We talk about art in all of its capacities, particularly our personal fields of interest. So, filmmaking, music, gaming, and, all the things that come with that, whether that's business or reviewing stuff or, everything in between, practically. So, I guess we'll go around introducing ourselves. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella. There's that beautiful logo right there, that Ariella logo. Also got it. Oh, no, wrong sleeve. There it is. No, wrong sleeve. Can I find it? It's hard to see on the camera. There it is. There's that Ariella logo. I'm very proud of my company, obviously. So you can find my website at ariella.co. How about you guys?
I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
I'm Nathan, and I'm a game developer and 3D modeler.
Sweet. And I just realized I left a title on the screen. Of course, there's got to be a editing error in here somewhere. There it goes. There it's gone. So the first thing I'd like to say is thank you guys who've stuck around with us, who've keep listening to our podcast. You guys are all awesome. We got Miss Costello in the house. What about the Ariella theme song? Yeah, this is not an Ariella show in per se. This is our just our different personas coming on the show. So I have this sort of generic song at the intro that is copyright free. Oh, New York. You guys can probably hear that. Yeah, so
You'll probably hear LA at some point when I'm talking. So
yeah, the cities speak. Yeah, so how are you guys' weeks? Like, what have you guys been up to? What's going on?
um, I don't know. Doing in addition to playing a lot of flute, been listening to a lot of different stuff. A lot of good Russian music, of course, and been listening to both the what's it called? Frozen. I've been listening to Frozen past few days, and also Beauty and the Beast, because as I pointed out on our Discord the other day, was the 30th anniversary of its premiere. Not its public release was in November, but it premiered in I think the New York Film Festival 30 years ago. I think Wednesday. So yeah, revisiting that. Um, yeah, I also got to go to a really nice talk that my school put on called "Music and Musicians and Entrepreneurship." That was a very fascinating talk. I think I was the only like instrumentalist who was there though. Is that everyone else was like doing music production or composition. So interesting, a lot of interesting stuff there.
Mm-hmm. Cool, cool. How about you, Nathan?
Uh, Nothing much, I guess. Really, this week it's pretty normal. I'm sort of kind of a lot, so I'm sort of tired. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Are you in midterm season yet, or no? You're still at the
Uh,
early part of the year. Yeah,
It's like yeah, it's been like a quarter of the school year, something like that.
yeah, yeah. Have fun with that.
Hmm.
Yeah, same for me. I've been ridiculously busy. I think I said a few weeks ago. It's like, oh yeah, I finished the big projects, and then like you kind of get slammed with all the little things you didn't do during the big project season. So I'm like, I'm still closing out one of those big projects. I've got like a new client I've taken up. This takes a good bit of time. Um, I'm preparing for a showcase like on next Sunday, so it's like ah, kind of going crazy. So I did promise a whole bunch of podcast upgrades like 3 weeks ago or something like that. But that is the nature of the game when you are running this podcast. Just for fun. Just for the fun of it, and to I don't know, make people happy, and also just fun for ourselves too. Talk about our arts. Um, that being said, one podcast upgrade I've been pitching for a while now, and you will not stop hearing this unless you give it to me. If you go to mixedmedia.locals.com, I still have not yet put the tiers, so that's my fault. But what I can promise is that whiteboard right there. My iPad's not next to me, so I can't draw on it right now. But that whiteboard right there is a live whiteboard, meaning if you have access to the link that gets you to that live whiteboard, you can draw on it live. So like while we're talking, you can doodle, you can, I don't know, yell at us through your drawings or something like that, as long as you keep it appropriate. But the way you get lifetime access to that is you become a bottom tier for like the first, I don't know, however many people. As long as you see that the bottom tier has this there, then you'll have lifetime access to this whiteboard. So I might do that for like the first 5 bottom tier people. Then it'll become like a top tier thing, right? So that bottom tier will get you access for your lifetime. That whiteboard right there, or I should say, it's probably more accurate to say while you are a member. It should be the actual thing I should say. Yes, and what that will do, because none of that money will pocket, of course. It's obviously not even that much money. That $5 a month. That $5 a month will directly go to our Rumble membership, where we can start live streaming there, which I think would be pretty big for the podcast. So that is my pitch. If you're watching this in post, you probably heard a shorter version of this pitch because I droned on way too long on that. But yes, so I'll stop worrying you with those details. I guess Ben can take it away with his topic.
Sure. Yeah, let me just see if I can get some more light, not look as terrible. Is that
Oh yeah, it's a lot better.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it helps that much, but all right. So we're going to talk a little bit about music streaming and some of the good and negative things about it. Or, well, I don't want to. Maybe I shouldn't say good things about it, but there probably are some benefits to it. So I guess we'll get into that. But maybe more on the bad parts about it and how to address them. So, basically, I'm sure everyone knows about music streaming because that's generally how we listen to music these days, generally. There's been a bit of a resurgence in physical LPs, records, recently, but that doesn't really offset the fact that generally we're listening to music from some kind of streaming service, and it's been that way since the arrival of the iPod many years ago, basically. And it's really changed quite a bit about how musicians make money off of their music. It's a lot less. There's a lot less clarity about how you make your money because everything is being kind of mediated by one of these companies. For instance, you can see if you're watching live, you can see a picture of Daniel Elk, the CEO of Spotify, on there, and it's a good place to start because in some ways Spotify is the most talked about and one of the most popular music streaming platforms.
Before you continue on, I would like to say that Mr. Elk just looks evil. Like, even if he was the nicest person on planet Earth, there's nothing he could do to his image. Like, look at that picture. Like, all of his pictures are like that. Just, he looks like, I don't know, a villain.
Yeah. So he's come under some fire, not only from artists, thinking that they're not getting paid enough money for streams, but also for his comments that, like, ones he made last year, where he said basically artists who are complaining that they're not getting enough money are lazy, and you can't just put out something every 3 or 4 years and hope that you're gonna make money like you used to be able to. You got to keep pumping out music, and that's the way to make more money. Which, I mean, we can look at that in two ways. Like, logically, if you put out a lot more stuff, right, of course you're going to make money, but that's not what the argument is, right? The argument is that they're not making money off what is already out there. So that's kind of a useless, like, it's not even talking about the same thing.
It's also extremely self-serving.
Also, right. Unless you're talking about like legacy bands, like, I don't know, like the Eagles or something, to come out with like a new, album every few years. Other than that, I mean, they don't have to worry about that anyway because they're making all their money off of royalties from stuff they did in the 60s and 70s. Okay, but nobody else just releases, a track and then waits 3 years to make another track, and it's like, why am I not making money? But it's not what artists do. No musician is doing that. Okay, and then complaining that they're not making enough money. So Spotify, they're also less transparent than a lot of these other streaming services, which none of them are terribly transparent about how they divide their money up. So the basic model that all of these companies are adopting is that there's some percentage, and they don't necessarily disclose what the percentage is, but some percentage of revenue goes to artists, as a pool, and the rest goes to the company itself. Not entirely clear what the percentage is. It's estimated to be about 70% going to artists, content creators. Of course, that has to get filtered through the record labels, so even less. which is the actual musicians, and then so about 30% goes to the company for Spotify. So that's the estimate, and of course it varies by different companies, and of course that revenue is generally being generated from ad revenue or from subscriptions to get, to not have to listen to ads. So the other argument that they put out is that if you want to get more money, then you just have to encourage your followers to pay for our subscriptions. Now, whether that's something that an artist can actually affect, right? It's questionable. Also, almost all of these, with one exception, one amongst the big streaming services, they're not paying artists by like raw stream. It's not like each stream gets this much money, although you can eventually calculate it out that way. But what they're doing is they're saying out of a total number of streams across every artist, in whatever the period is, and within the quarter, I guess, right? We have, let's say we have 10,000 streams, just as an example. And out of those, Taylor Swift is 25% of them. She gets 25% of revenue.
Wow.
So, or her label, and then.
Oh, okay. I understood what you're saying.
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
I watched a video showing how you can take advantage of that by just buying old used phones for cheap, and then just playing your own songs on Spotify because of your percentage increases.
Apparently, this is a thing, though. Actually, there are some underground artists that try because it's not just for getting money; it's also for sort of cheating the algorithm in terms of recommended songs and stuff like that, which I think is hilariously broken.
Oh, right. Well, Spotify is known to for their suggested tracks to act not actually to basically invent things, or get hire some random person, some random unknown pianist, record 5 minutes of Beethoven, and they'll say, this is our recommended Beethoven for you, right? And it's not what you're looking for, and the person doesn't even know what they're being asked to do, so they're taking a terrible deal, and which is drawing views away from Vladimir Ashkenazy or some other great pianist. Who actually has recorded this work in a serious manner. So yeah, there's that too. Spotify has lots of questionable practices. I think that for me the most unfortunate fact about Spotify, and you can look up Daniel Elk if you want, and you can find a little bit about his past. But the main thing I would focus on is that he has had a great sense of how to take advantage of markets, even as a kid. So apparently, when he was in middle school, he figured out that he could convince other kids to work in his company by just bribing them with video games, and he would charge $5,000 to make websites for people, but have his classmates do it. Yeah.
Wait, who did this?
But yeah.
The Spotify CEO.
He briefly was ran as a CEO, of uTorrent, which
wait,
significant.
What is that?
It's one of the
for downloading things using torrenting, right?
Right.
Right.
Which
is
generally used for pirating things, right?
Exactly. So he's was heavily involved for a while with one of the biggest pieces of software for illegally sharing music, and then he decides to found Spotify to quote remedy the problem that these poor artists aren't getting paid anything because of piracy. Like, okay, so you help contribute to piracy becoming a big thing, and now you're gonna remedy it yourself. So
You don't understand.
Spotify.
You have to.
I don't think.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I was going to say.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
You have to understand. You have to believe him this time instead of last time, of course.
Yeah. So Spotify, in my opinion, does not necessarily hold the moral high ground. Not that any of these big companies necessarily do. Yeah. So that's Spotify, and basically all the big companies operate in this manner, except for Deezer, which has this model of if you are a subscriber to their service, premium service, 100% of your money goes to the artists you listen to, divided up by percentage of what you listen to. So, which in theory is a great thing, because I may, if I go on to Spotify and I listen to only Bob Dylan. I mean, I shouldn't use that. I don't know why that's the first artist that popped into my head. He's too big. I listen to some artists that I like, right? And I don't listen to Taylor Swift at all. I'm just making up 25%, but let's say she has 25% of all views or streams, listens, whatever, right? None of my money would go to Taylor Swift. It would all go to people that I listen to. So one, you feel better about that than you would in Spotify if you're paying for Spotify Premium, where if you don't listen to Taylor Swift, whatever percent she gets comes from the same percentage she gets generally also comes from what you're paying. And in theory, that should also make a lot of smaller artists get more money. The issue though is that Deezer and the other streaming platforms that issue the highest amount per stream, like Pandora, have such small user bases and generally small catalogs that you end up making less money anyway on average than you do on one of these big platforms, which just have so many more millions of users. I think Deezer has 1% of Spotify's user base. So even if you literally, would make more with the same user base, you don't have that user base. That's generally the problem with the sites that offer the highest amount of revenue. They have such small user bases and limited catalogs that the artists don't get to make any money off of them, and they're not very enticing because of that.
What about Tidal?
Yeah, so Tidal is another one that has the highest amount paid to artists per stream, but again, kind of limited user base, and it's also got a lot of controversies surrounding it and what they allow on there. So, and it's kind of genre specific too. So you can't go on to and listen to, if you're a film music fan, you can't listen to John Williams. So, in theory, again, a good emerging alternative, but it needs some things worked out about it.
What's it restricted to? I had never heard of it before.
It's Jay-Z's platform.
So I think it's to like hip hop, rap, and R&B.
You think you would expand that if it becomes successful? Because I don't see why you wouldn't.
It's been around for a long time now, right? Like
for a few years, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know anything about it though, really.
What was it called?
I don't know too much about it either. Tidal.
Okay.
Yeah, I and there have been some recent controversies surrounding it, so that's something that maybe one day could be, if the management gets its act together and allows more things on it, could be could disrupt all of this. Okay, so there's some other things too that are noted about streaming as well. So first, just so you have a general like baseline. Again, these things are really hard to calculate too, because Spotify does other things where they don't just do by revenue by stream. They also take into account your location. So you get different amounts per stream from different countries. And also they have an algorithm that determines something about no one knows what it is, but based on length. So like a listen, it's not, no one even knows whether it's like if you listen to something longer, you get more per stream or you get less. It's not clear. My instinct says that you probably get less for something longer because they can't interrupt it with their ads. But it's not clear. We just know that there is a length component, at least in the United States calculation. But as just a baseline estimate, there's a really great post by a kind of up-and-coming composer who's currently John Powell's assistant, who is starting his own career in big films right now. And so he posted this on Facebook, not publicly, but in a group the Nightman. And he calculated that across all platforms, just for United States listens only, if you have 275,000 streams evenly distributed across the Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon Music, you make $90. So almost 300,000 streams to get $90.
That's nuts.
Yeah, and that's as the artist who owns the royalties. They don't own publishing though, so the publishers make 10 times that amount. That's still very little.
That's 1.5 copies of a AAA game.
Right. So if you think about that, like for 300,000 listens, streams, whatever you want to call it, if you combine $90 and $900, we'll round that to 1,000, right? Instead of 990, $1,000 distributed to the artist side. Now, I don't think it takes. I don't know exactly how you calculate it, but if you just think about like a CD sale, and say the CD, an average CD costs like $20, so it's probably around $15 to $20 for most CDs. What that is, like 50 sales to make $1,000 versus 300,000 streams.
At this point, I wonder why people would even put their music on Spotify, not just put it on YouTube for free. Like what's even the point of that? Like you might as well just open it up to everybody, so that, and then try to get your revenue from other sources like clothing or something like that.
Because that's how people listen to it. I mean, you want to make it's better to make something off of it than to make nothing, right?
But 90 for like was it like 300,000?
Yeah, we're rounding slightly, but we're gonna say 300,000. And obviously, the calculation is a little bit off of the CDs because you have to factor in like manufacturing costs. But so instead of maybe 50 sales, we'll say 100 sales. But still, that's way less than 300,000 listens.
Okay.
I mean, even if you assume that 100 CD sales and each person listens to it, what, 300 times? Like, okay, so then maybe we're getting close to it, to like an equivalence. But how many times do people like generally in a short period of time listen to the CD 300 times in a row? Probably not that often, right?
You know what's crazy? I think at this point, YouTube would actually pay you more, which is disturbing.
Well, YouTube is actually, so it's a little bit confusing with YouTube because any song that is recognized as belonging to you, you make, I want to make sure I have the right number of zeros, but I believe it's 0.0008 cents if it's associated with you on YouTube.
That's insane.
Okay. And if it's through your official artist account, you make exactly double that.
How many zeros were we talking about? What did you say? You said 0. What?
0.0008 cents per stream, listen, view.
So for $8, you need 1,000 views. Is that what that is? 10,000?
No,
10,000,
right?
I think. Or
10,000, I think.
10,000, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10,000.
What a joke.
Okay.
So, if we're comparing to the 300,000, then you multiply that by 30. 8 times 30 is like 240. So you technically do make more, but it's not good still.
No. So the actual number, that's about 1/10. We'll get into that in a second. But that's far lower per stream than everything else. I don't know. Maybe we're forgetting some math somewhere along the line in our heads. Missing some zeros doing it. But yeah, YouTube is actually by far the worst for an artist, with one caveat. So really, the best thing to do, kind of echoing what Irving said a couple of weeks ago about, investing in physical media, right? Physical copies of film. I think generally is to purchase a physical copy of the music that you want to listen to. That way you don't have any issues of legality too. You don't have to worry about is this someone, posting this illegally on YouTube or something? And is it officially recognized as anything going to the artist? There's also the benefit too of, a lot more content is available. Like, for instance, if you buy the official soundtrack to Disney's Aladdin, okay, you can listen to all of it. If you go to Spotify or YouTube Music or any other of these major sites, and you go to Aladdin, you can listen to all of it except Friend Like Me, sung by why am I not thinking of his name right now? Who's the guy who plays the genie?
No.
Why am I not thinking of his name?
I'm gonna forget. Robin Williams.
Robin Williams, right? That is blocked by all of these companies because for some reason I don't know why. I don't know whether that's coming from Disney or whether that's I don't understand why that is, but you can't listen to it. You're offered, at least on Spotify, when you try to listen to it, you're offered to listen to it in like every other language under the sun. But why do I want to listen to it in any other language? Like, I don't really care to hear the French version with someone else singing it, right? But it's not the same thing. So some content is restricted that way. You also get content that is, occasionally you'll find things that are slightly changed, such as if you're just going to listen, I'm using Disney as an example because Disney happens to be pretty egregious and obvious perpetrator of this kind of stuff. If you listen to the official soundtrack of Little Mermaid, okay, if I own it on a CD, I can listen to Part of Your World in its entirety. But if I try to listen to it on one of these streaming platforms, they get, instead of the rest of the album that you listen to, which is the same, you get a version that cuts out the beginning. And even in YouTube Music, they pull up a video from Disney with part of like the scene. So you miss all the beginning music for it. Why that is, I don't know. They figured that you're more interested in like seeing it and whatever. So, content sometimes not being exactly what you're looking for, what it actually is on the physical medium. This also is kind of a balance. generally, it's much easier to find a whole bunch of things on these big streaming platforms. They have an enormous range, and that's a good thing. It's often really hard to find copies of certain things, but certain other things that you might be interested in, you can't get on any of these streaming platforms. So again, going to Disney, there's a fantastic album that I bought, came out a few years ago. It's the Legacy edition of The Little Mermaid. It has all the music from the film, including, you know, not the like big tracks, every single second of music that was recorded, plus demos where the composer Menken is playing the piano and Howard Ashman, the lyricist, is singing all the songs, which is very cool. Also, you get, you know, great liner notes for that. You can't listen to that anywhere else. So it's only available as a CD. So, you know, certain content like that. Again, Disney is a pretty big perpetrator of that. But it happens a lot with film music. There's a lot of film music that for some reason these companies, I don't know why, these studios do not want it released. So I just bought the other day very cheap CD of James Horner's Willow, which is a kind of famous score, and you can get a CD for like, you know, $5 online, but you can't listen to it anywhere else. So some content, yes, it would be very hard to find in a physical format, but certain content that you might be interested in, you can't get on any of these big streaming platforms, and you're even less likely to be able to find them on the smaller ones that may pay you a little bit more. So with all that in mind, generally, though, you're going to continue listening to music through a streaming service just because of its convenience and the range of what you can find on there. So my recommendation for streaming service is actually YouTube Music, which is separate from YouTube. YouTube Music is the highest rate money sent to artists per stream. It's a tiny bit ahead of Apple Music. So if you're a big Apple Music fan, you can stick with Apple Music. But yeah, YouTube Music is on average, about twice as much as a US stream on Spotify. You know, given all those parameters, it varies exactly how much you can calculate a Spotify stream being, but it's approximately double Spotify. It's 10 times what you get if you listen to it on YouTube. So you have to make sure you're listening to it on YouTube Music. If you are on our Discord, every link that I have shared to music is from YouTube Music for that reason. It's what I use. Also, I find it a little bit more convenient less frustrating to listen to than Spotify, because Spotify tends to go like a certain number of tracks or a certain amount of time before they interrupt your free service with ads, which on one hand that's good with them. They give you these ads that last like 3 minutes, like a series of ads. And YouTube Music is a little bit less annoying because I found that you tend to get something, a very short ad, like a 5 to 10 second ad, either every track or every other track. And I find that a little bit less annoying than like the 3-minute ad barrage, maybe a little bit less frequently than you get on Spotify. So personally, I find it a little more convenient to listen to YouTube Music anyway. I no real way of knowing how extensive their catalog is compared to Spotify, but I've pretty much been able to find anything I've been able to find on Spotify. They have the same issues of certain material being left out, like a lot of James Horner, James Newton Howard scores not being available. Same issues with Robin Williams singing "A Friend Like You" or "Friend Like Me" not being available. So you're not missing anything as far as I can tell. compared to Spotify. So my recommendation is to, for the sake of artists, to not listen to YouTube definitely, but to go with YouTube Music over anything else.
Yeah, interesting. Or buy your physical media. I think for me,
or buy the physical media where you can. Probably, obviously a lot more upfront cost than just not paying anything to listen to something on one of these streaming sites. But sometimes I think it's worth it if you got material that you can't get otherwise, or you just really want to support the artist.
Yeah, and also like physical media for music has a lot of different forms as well. I don't know if anyone really uses I don't know what's your opinion on like something like iTunes, like buying the rights to listen to the music rather than buying like a CD or something like that.
No, he's muted.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think my computer was like not responding to me unmuting
Okay.
it. Sorry, is your question like about the listening experience or what? I'm sorry.
No. I mean, like, because there's like you can buy songs without having physical media, right? Like you could buy like an album off of iTunes, and you're not streaming it anymore. You actually just bought the rights to listen to it. And I was wondering what your opinion on was on that.
So that's a whole another like calculus about what that does for artists and also the availability of what you're after. I mean, I think in a way that's probably more useful, given the fact that CDs are kind of increasingly irrelevant, not produced, and fewer devices that can play them being put out today. So in the long term, that's probably better. I know a lot of people were kind of annoyed with John Powell recently when he been releasing some expanded editions of some of his biggest scores, with every second of music and alternate takes of things, and but he's only been releasing them digitally and as LPs. And there's a certain pod segment of the music world that was upset that he didn't release them as CDs, but the days of CDs are rapidly dwindling to a close. So eventually, especially if the math works out for purchasing digitally, that's probably the way to go. But I don't know exactly what the calculus is currently on that and revenue for artists.
My intuition is kind of like the problem with CDs obviously is portability, and like unlike films, you don't, your film doesn't need to be portable because you generally, well, I guess some people are strange and watch movies on subways. I've seen that before. That's kind of weird, but generally people sit down at home and they watch a movie, so portability is not as much of an issue. Whereas music, like people want to be listening to it wherever they can. So it kind of presents like a unique issue with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And like, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know. We'll see how things evolve. I can only imagine that other than it being part of an whatever word you want to put on it, like a oligarchy or a monopoly of companies, who sort of, funnel all of these IPs into this space. Other than that, I think I'm hearing more and more artists talk about ownership and true ownership. I hear it a lot more in music than I do, maybe because they've been beaten to death. Maybe that's the reason why.
Yeah. I think it's also because increasingly, with the advent of certain kinds of technologies that are, increasingly learnable and acquirable, is that a word, acquirable
Sure.
by by the by almost anyone. It's become much easier to do all the sorts of things that you used to have a production company, production label do for you. You can mix and master your own music right now, and you can, if you really want to, you may not be very effective if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have any guidance, but you can advertise it yourself too. So
yeah,
that does represent kind of a paradigm shift that's happening in the musical world, of people trying to have more ownership of their own stuff. Of course, that's not going to happen, in the world of like media music, where you don't own what you write. But for a lot of commercial music that is not like that, I think that's certainly a trend that's going to happen in the future. You're going to see even more artists having more full control over their own an ownership of their own music.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if you are an indie artist and you need marketing help, I give free consultations on ariella.co. That is my plug. Just go to my website and fill the contact page. Anyway. Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I think I'm hopeful, minus the sort of anti-competitive nature of a lot of these things. There's a lot more than just because obviously there are multiple companies in this space, and I don't think that's enough of that's not enough of an analysis of the situation. There's a lot of nasty stuff that happens behind the scenes to artists, between these companies, and all of it ends up screwing the consumer at the end of the day, because competition doesn't properly happen. And hopefully that gets solved. Cross my fingers. Oh, and prediction that I gave when I was talking about Donda by Kanye came true. He did change the album. So, if I don't know if he sold the physical version
already?
of it, but yeah, he already changed it.
It's been like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I know. I called it. But if you owned the CD, I don't know if he sold CDs or not, or I don't know what the heck he did with it, but if he sold CDs, if you have the old CD now, you have something that's like way more valuable than when you bought it. When you bought it, it was probably worth as much as the materials that it was printed on, practically speaking, in terms of reselling it and all that kind of stuff. But now you've got a collector's item, and that's pretty cool. So, there's the immutability aspect of physical
media bought
as
it.
well. I should have bought it, right? Yeah, I don't know. Cool. Cool. Who wants to go next? Do you want to go next, Nathan, or?
Sure. If you want me to, I don't really mind either way.
Okay. Yeah, you want to reintroduce the podcast then?
Okay. So, 1 second. Sorry.
No worries.
All right. Yeah. Should I explain why we're reintroducing as per usual?
Sure.
All right.
Just cut it out anyway in the final version.
If you're here live, we're reintroducing the podcast because we split them into 3 sections for each of our topics. And so, at the beginning of split them into 3 sections for when we post them on YouTube and other platforms that are not live. So we reintroduce for every single section so that, it doesn't just jump into the topic right when the video starts. So that's what I'll be doing right now. Welcome back to the Mixed Media Podcast. We've just gone over Ben's topic, which was about streaming platforms and how they're pretty trash for music. Now I'll be talking about marketing your game, how to do it, and why it's super important and overlooked, which I think might be a surprise to some people if you don't overlook marketing. But, you have to remember that there are a lot of people who are either new to the gaming industry or just don't look for knowledge, I guess. Because this is definitely one of the topics you at least run into pretty frequently if you're actively searching for, okay, how do I release my game and stuff like that. And the problem is a lot of people don't actually listen to it if they hear it, or they just don't know at all. So yeah, I'm going to enlighten you on this topic.
Also, you can. I gave this plug last time, but if you need some marketing help, you can go to ariella.co and I give free consultations.
True. Okay. Pull up my notes. Okay. First, why do you need marketing? I'm going to go over I split into 3 sections. So firstly, it puts you ahead of everyone else who didn't market. 2, allows you to gather crucial information about your audience. And 3, it sets up expectations for, we'll talk about what for. But yeah. So firstly, the first point was that it puts you ahead of everyone. So as I said on a previous episode, I don't remember what that episode was or what I was talking about, but I said something about, it was the one where I analyzed the ICO newsletter. I went through, it was like a case study about the games released the week that that podcast came out. I still don't remember what the grand topic was, but yeah, that one. I showed that most of the games there did not market their games, and they also did not receive many reviews, which means they didn't receive many sales, or they were just not interesting enough to do anything with it. So I think it's evident from that most games don't actually market themselves. So even it's like relative to the total amount of games you see put, I remember I referenced a number. I don't remember what it is. Steam has a massive amount of games that are put on it every single day. It's ridiculous, but most of them don't even do a single bit of marketing, or at most they just tell their friends or something like that and expect success or something. That doesn't happen that way. So I think a common misconception is that Steam will do the marketing for you. This is not true, or any other platform for games. This sort of will, but you have to get the ball rolling for them. So, there are so many games released every week. Why would they market yours specifically? They only have so much room on their front page and other advertising spots that they need some way to choose, and they choose based on essentially guessing whether your game will be popular. And they do that. Well, Steam does that with wish lists, for example. I'm going to be talking in the context of Steam because it's the most common platform and the most accessible in terms of how easy it is to get your game on it. Well, I mean, technically there are easier platforms like itch, but I guess that's is less popular. All right, so both popularity and ease of access. So yeah, there are too many games for them to market. So in order to get yourself on the front page, you have to gain wish lists, and the only way for you to gain wish lists are for people to know about your game to begin with. So that's one reason for marketing. That puts you ahead of everyone else who didn't do that, who has 2 wish lists from their mom and their dad essentially, and maybe themselves. You also get people to recognize your game. So I don't remember where I found this out from, but it's something like the more familiar people are with your product, the more likely they are to buy it. And that's like why advertising works, like TV advertising, of just showing you some item, right? And you might be like, well, that's not effective. I don't want to buy the item right now. Like, this is not useful. But maybe one day you need this item, and you're looking through the store aisle and you see the brand you saw on TV, and subconsciously you'll be drawn to it to buy it, whether or not it's the best product actually. So getting people to see your game prior to it actually releasing is a lot better than people just seeing it for the first time on release. Okay, and on to my second point, I said it allows you to gather crucial information about your audience. So one way of marketing is to do a devlog of some sort, so posting development updates as you work on the game, essentially. So you implement a new feature, you post it on some social media, for example. So let's say you do this on Reddit, where you have multiple different subreddits with their own topics. So you can sort of you can cross-post to different subreddits and stuff like that, and you can see what the reception is on different types of subreddits. And this sort of gives you a reading on what your audience is like for your particular game, right? And sometimes it's very hard to determine a target audience. So you make a game with an audience in mind, but you're not 100% sure if the target audience will actually like this. Maybe it's a bit different than you think. So this will sort of solidify what your target audience actually is. And if you really don't if maybe you're making some, say, sandbox game, and they didn't, I don't know if r/sandbox exists, but let's assume it does. And they didn't really like it there, but they liked it on, I don't know, r/strategy, for example. Well, either you can just pivot it so that you're emphasizing the strategy aspects of it, or you can just be like, okay, let's just tone down on the strategy stuff. Let's figure out why they don't like the sandbox elements as much, and work from there. It's worth noting that you also have to account for the fact that certain subreddits are more popular than others, so you can't just be like, oh, I have more upvotes in this one subreddit. That means it's more for this type of audience. You know, if you have a subreddit of one person versus 1 million people, obviously you should expect more upvotes from the one with 1 million people in it. So be careful for stuff like that. Or you might even have audiences where I imagine that certain subreddits are more likely to upvote your thing just because of the type of person they might include. So comparing yourself to other posts within the subreddit will be a good gauge of how you're doing with that kind of community. It's also, so another part of gaining information is to also post on different platforms. This will show you what platform is most effective for you. Different platforms have different specialties within them. So if you're doing a lot of image-based things, I would say Twitter is probably not the place to go necessarily. Twitter is not really known for images, I guess, necessarily. Something like Reddit or Instagram or something like that tends to work a lot better with images or videos too. And this is useful for knowing when you're actually releasing the game as well. Like, where do you push hardest? Because you have those 24 hours after you release the game where you should, in theory, be working your butt off to get the ball rolling so you can be front paged as long as possible. Where do you target most? What platform are you going to be working on? Because you only have so much time, and you can't be doing everything at the same time, unless you have a huge team, in which case you probably don't need this advice. So yeah. As well, devlogs will let the audience solve problems for you. So let's say you can come up with some cool ideas for your game that maybe you didn't think of before, especially if your game is in an early stage where feature creep really isn't that big of a problem you need to worry about. Although, yeah, be careful during the later stages of game development where you're almost done or you're polishing, maybe you're halfway. You don't want to take on every suggestion you think is a cool idea, because then you'll never finish the game and it might seem sort of unfocused on many different aspects because you just took everyone's suggestions. As well, your audience will, or not your audience yet, I guess, but people who see your stuff posted will scrutinize your games in ways that you did not think to scrutinize it yourself. They might notice things that are off with the game that, because you've been working with it so much, and you sort of sometimes you get used to certain things. So I don't know, it's hard to explain, but yeah, if you're making your own game, you're constantly playtesting it, not necessarily for the purpose of testing if it's a good game, but maybe you're just trying to fix a bug, right? You need to play through this section over and over and over again to testing to see if the bug's been fixed or whatever. And you sort of get used to certain aspects of your game. You sort of become numb to them, and they may not be good aspects of your game. So showing it to brand new people it's good to get a sort of outside view of what's going on from your very unique vantage point of having worked with it so much. And their view is going to align a lot more with what's actually the truth, probably. So yeah. And my third point was that sets up some expectations for how your game will do. So you can better guess how many people will buy your copy or buy copies of your game, or if it'll just flop entirely. So if you deem that no one is really interested in your game, you can try to pivot your game to something to be new, or you can abandon it altogether. Especially if you're at the start. At the start, it's great actually. You should do this as early as possible, because at the start you have the most time to pivot. Nothing's really baked in at this time, and at the same time, abandoning it isn't a big cost. You didn't spend months necessarily on this game, so it's good to just try to advertise as you do, say, your minimum viable product or something like that. The initial part of marketing is just as important as the end. The initial part will give you more important feedback, I think, about the general way your game is going. But the end will be what gets people to buy your game. Because if you only advertise in the beginning, people are not necessarily going to remember your game. They're not going to remember to go and wishlist it whenever you put it on Steam and stuff like that. As well, being able to estimate how many copies your game will sell is useful for determining your budget. So if you think your game will sell, $1,000 worth of copies, then you can adjust your budget accordingly, maybe higher or lower depending on what you thought originally. Make $10,000, whatever. I understand this is a very hard thing to do. It's not like you can just feel like, oh, I got 100 upvotes. That means I don't know, 50 buys. It doesn't really work like that. But at least if you're getting some upvotes, you'll make more than $0 probably. So you can be a bit more, a bit less cautious about spending money on your game. And you can also guess at a good price for your game. So this is kind of weird because I would say that with the interest of your game, as that increases, you should make your game a higher price. And I don't really know too much about pricing your game, but what I always notice is that it doesn't really follow a sort of interest versus, sort of. It doesn't really follow a quality versus price graph entirely for all games, right? I think I poked fun at this before that games are either $30 or $60 and there's no in between, or free, and there's not really much in between because I don't know. It's just I guess people will buy it for some reason like that, or the fact that some games are pushed to $60 and no one will buy a cent more than that for whatever reason. So, but people will totally buy your $60 game even if it's worth $50. It's weird stuff like that. So maybe you shouldn't necessarily believe or trust what you see in the results of your advertising for your prices. Maybe there's some weird game industry math you need to do to figure it out and round to the nearest $30 essentially, or something like that. But yeah, those are the 3 points for why you need to market. So how do you market? There was I did mention before the devlog idea. You might be able to see a lot of devlogs, but I don't think it's saturated yet, and not even close to the target audience for devlogs. Depends what kind of devlog you're doing too. If you're doing YouTube,
I agree entirely.
What'd you say?
I agree entirely. The gaming devs don't understand the value of generally speaking of documenting their progress publicly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid of their ideas being stolen. This is a irrational fear of many indie developers, including myself.
Same.
Yeah, it's okay, I have this idea. Will someone really go, wow, that's such a great idea that out of all ideas, I'm going to take yours. I'm going to hopefully make it before you make it. I don't know, especially if you're very vague about your ideas. I mean, they can make a game that's similar, but it's not the same, and that might be fine. That's really assuming that they actually steal your idea. What's more likely to happen is you make your game, then they steal it because they see the success, which happens, which is annoying, but happens a lot in the mobile game market where people will make their $2 games, which are fairly easy to copy, and so someone will just copy it, put it literally, just change some textures. Hopefully, no one notices. People will notice anyways. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, you probably won't get your game stolen though by just spouting ideas out mid-development. Probably not. It also shows that you're serious about it, so you're giving them some competition. But yeah, so I think on YouTube it's maybe a bit more saturated. I still wouldn't say nearly completely saturated, but it's a bit more of a worry because when you go to YouTube, you're really looking for you have to watch a YouTube video is a lot more of an investment than watching a Reddit video, because a Reddit video is only so long. A YouTube video can be fairly long, right? And up until recently, YouTube hasn't been really used that much for super short form content like Reddit. But I guess things are changing, so maybe you can try to invade that space if no one has done that currently. Which I'm not really sure of any what do you call them, devlogs that use YouTube Shorts. I only watch devlogs from the normal YouTube stuff. So
you should do it.
There's a big space there, huh?
You should do it.
Yeah, I'll talk at the end about why I don't do this. But yeah.
Have you seen people doing indie game developers doing things like Kickstarter, GoFundMe, Patreon, rewards and that kind of stuff? People supporting it.
Yeah, definitely. Patreon's pretty common on YouTube for for people who do devlogs. Kickstarter is, I think, an underused thing as well. It's like it doesn't cost you anything to start a Kickstarter, right? As far as I'm aware, but the possible gains are they're humongous. People will pay a lot of money for stuff that's quite frankly crap. Like or like things that are like you look at that and you're like, why did you actually spend money on that? But if you have an actual good idea, right, then maybe you can actually make more money than the thing that doesn't even look good to begin with, right? So yeah, I would definitely recommend Kickstarter if you know what to do with the money. Obviously, if you're just making some small passion project where you don't intend to spend any money at all because you're doing everything yourself and it's more about having fun and stuff like that, and you're not really looking to make too much money or whatever, or make a living out of it, then Kickstarter, it might be more work, you know what I'm saying? Because then you have to hire people, and it's like, okay, if I didn't even want to do this to begin with, what's the point? But yeah, people use Kickstarter, but not enough people use Kickstarter. Patreon's pretty common, though, for YouTube devlog folks, but there are not that many of them to begin with, so relative to the whole audience of people who could be watching them. So yeah. Another good thing about devlogs is that they're applicable to every social media platform. Essentially, doesn't matter which platform you're on. As you know, you just need to be able to send some information about your game, about how it's going, whether it be an image, some text, video. That being said, images and videos tend to work very well relative to text because, as the saying goes, an image is worth 1,000 words or whatever it is. It's a lot easier to convey a game. Let's take an example. Very long time ago, one of the earlier podcast episodes, I was reviewing a game called The Spectrum Retreat, and I struggled to explain the exact mechanic of the game because it's a very simple mechanic. It is extraordinarily simple, but putting that into words is extremely difficult. If I showed you 5 seconds, you'd probably understand exactly what's happening versus me rambling on for a minute trying to explain something and not even doing a good job of it. So for games, especially, being able to just show a video of your core mechanic or something is a lot better than explaining it. And especially because it's a lot less brain intensive to just look at the screen, a video of someone doing something, than read a thing and try to understand, okay, what are you trying to say? What is the thing he's actually doing? Whereas the video is literally exactly what you see if you're playing the video game, right? So in theory, you want your player to understand what's happening while they're playing the game, right? Which means the video, people would be able to understand what's happening versus a paragraph about your mechanics and whatnot. So of course, aside from mechanics, you can also post stuff like artwork being done, which you can't really convey in text unless it's maybe a text-based game or something like that, and other progress like that. I lost. Okay, yeah. Use images and videos if possible. Text is not the greatest, but it'll do for shorter things. And the great thing about social media is social media will advertise for you if you're doing, pushing out good content. So, let's take Reddit, for example. If you start getting upvotes, then it pushes you to the top of the Reddit page or the subreddits page, which is sort of advertising for you. That's sort of what you want, right? Because you're advertising, so that's something advertises for you. It's just like exponential gain, essentially. And it's sort of what you wish Steam would do for you, right? That's the whole goal, is just to be free of advertising, essentially, and have something else do it for you. So, at the start, the initial goal is for Steam to put you on the front page, so you don't have to. You can just, lay back and do nothing and watch the money roll in. But before you do that, you need to get an audience, and to get an audience, you can have social media do that for you. So, say on Instagram, if you have a public page, you post images and people start liking them or whatever. You need, initial following. Just have your friends be like, hey, follow my page, thanks. And then once you do that, it'll start appearing in people's recommendeds or whatever it's called on Instagram. I'm sure it works the same on other platforms too. So yeah, as long as you're pushing out good content, then social medias will just do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, especially YouTube and YouTube Shorts, I guess. So aside from devlogs, you can also do partnerships with figures in gaming. So I guess you can call them influencers, if you will. So, for example, giving out free Steam keys is a good idea upon release. What are you losing? You're losing one copy, one possible. You don't even know they're going to buy the game. You lose one sale, but you also gain their exposure to their whole audience, which may be thousands of people or even millions, depending on who it is. And out of thousands, you just need one person to buy the game to recoup your costs, which is not very hard as long as your game is good, right? That's pretty much it for what I have to say. I'm trying to think of other methods you can. Oh yeah. Also, giving it to you can give it to like news outlets for review essentially and stuff like that. But that's not really news. Is not gaming news is not as consumed as it was before. It's not as important, I guess I should say. But it's definitely something you should do because once again, it costs nothing. Oh, one thing I should say is that none of this costs anything except time. So if you have time, you should one, you should do this, and two, you should don't be afraid of getting a rejection because it only costs time, which obviously for some people is worse than other people, right? So send emails to people if you need to, and even if it looks like a long shot, even if it looks like a 1% chance you'll get what you want, just do it anyways because what are you losing? I mean, obviously it doesn't mean like you should, maybe email PewDiePie and be like, hey, play this game because, I mean, you're going to get lost in his emails probably. But, emailing other streamers who are, of a smaller size, I guess. Not small, but not PewDiePie levels of, largest gaming YouTuber. And also even emailing, emailing other companies to do partnerships and stuff like that. I mean, the worst they can say is no, right? And that's it. You lose nothing from it. But yeah, to address the earlier thing about why I don't do this,
that's what I want to know.
What'd you say?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard, to be clear. It is an incredibly time-consuming endeavor because you can't really stop, or you can stop, but a lot of this is based on momentum. Social media platforms a lot of them are momentum based in a way where if you just drop off the face of the earth, it's going to be harder to start up. As well, it's also part of you have to get in the habit of doing it. So that's also a mental thing, not even just that's something that's hard to control. That once you stop, you have to be like, do I really want to start again? I have to start again because or else the thing you did before is useless. As well, you don't even know if you're going to release the game necessarily. Like if you don't know, and that's a very tough thing to do because you're potentially you shouldn't promise that the game is going to be released first off, but you might be giving the impression that you're promising that the game will be released, and all of a sudden you upset a bunch of people if you didn't actually do that. That being said, if your game is worth releasing, or if your game is not worth releasing, so you don't want to release it, then that should be a problem because your audience is going to be like 2 people, so it's not that bad. But yeah, essentially it's very hard to do, but if you want to be an indie dev, it's better to do it sooner than later because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be because you're going to end up with less time. Currently I'm in college, right, which is time consuming in some sense, but okay, when I get out of college, I have a job, and then I have a job to have to travel to my job, like hours on a drive, right? It's not like I live in a city where I can just walk out of an apartment and my job's right there, and I have family, and it's like, ooh, wow, now I only have maybe weekends to work, for example. That's really bad relative to now where I can work pretty much any day. Maybe not for a long time. Maybe, depending on the day, I might be super busy, but, I'm not confined to a few days like some people might be. So if you're watching this and you haven't even been to college, dude, start, please. I'm begging
Agreed.
you. You'll it also depends on what college you go to be clear, but if you there's some colleges that are a lot less demanding than other ones. So if you end up going to a minimal work college, then, or if you don't end up going to college at all, then maybe maybe it's not so bad. But yeah, be careful of time because you lose it forever, and you lose that part of your life where you had time forever essentially, which is not good. So yeah, I should probably start doing this. It's just extraordinarily hard to get into it. I've actually brainstormed different types of content. I even had a audio only idea for YouTube Shorts with messing with synthesizers and just I made a bunch of accounts in the case, reserved in case, because one of the annoying things is that all the good account names are taken. So I made sure to reserve that one just in case I ended up using it. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. I don't know. It's a lot to think about.
I 100% sympathize. I quit my job. I'm doing my stuff full time, and I still I was on like a schedule with my posts and stuff on my social media accounts and everything, and I was like putting in the work, and I was getting rewarded for it. It worked, so I got some business in return. The problem is once I got the business in return, it kind of crunched my time and crunched out that part of time I had, like disrupted my schedule for posting all of my other stuff and like being super active. Now, since then, I've been going, okay, when will be the time? When will be the time? And part of the reason I wanted to do a podcast like this was to force, I mean, all of us is good for all of us, right? Force us to keep putting our names out there consistently in some way, even if it's like a little bit more simple off the cuff. I mean, it's just a different kind of content, right? But I would love to be putting out a YouTube video every week, but right now it feels like it's impossible, even though the returns I know would be very good, especially because I do this for other people. It's kind of strange in that way, but
Also, a weird thing is that it feels incredibly like lonely in a way, because you're the only one doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you don't have a team to work with, and if you want a team as an indie dev, dude, good luck. It's hard because it's not that the people who won't do it. It's that those people don't want what you want. It's not that not necessarily that the vision is different. That is one thing, that the vision for your game might be different, but like sorry if you hear the phone ring, but they might not want might not want the company, you know what I'm saying? They might not be that invested, might be like, oh, I'll be part of your team and be a, programmer, artist, whatever. And you find out 2 months in, they're like, this is hard, dude. I think I'm going to quit. And it's like, come on, bro. Can't be quitting here. Well, this is your dream, but it's not their dream. They were just there because they thought they were being nice and stuff, just wanted to help you out. So yeah, it's hard doing it alone is like, it's tough.
Couldn't agree.
I think of what you say?
I couldn't agree more. It's incredibly lonely. It's incredibly lonely.
Yeah, I remember there's this guy who was a YouTuber. This is interesting because this is the opposite of what I'm saying actually. So whatever, take it, make of it what you will. But as a YouTuber, I can't remember his name. He's a fairly well-known game developer, YouTuber. Thomas Rush, I think his name is. He said like, he was. I think he quit his job. I can't remember, or maybe he's working part time and he's doing game dev the other half. But he had a wife and then he had kids, and then essentially he was like, I can't fail anymore because I have kids now, and like there's literally no other option. Is either I succeed or I am a failure to the greatest extent, essentially. So, there's something to be said about like. Okay, I'm not saying dangle your children as a sort of like carrot for you to for you to chase after. But I am saying if you are in a situation where the pressure is high, that might make you perform better. Or maybe worse. I don't know. I'm just saying, interesting observation. I'm not telling you what to do there. But yeah. I remember also, but there's someone else on a GDC talk, and he said essentially like when he started doing game dev, he said in hindsight he had to neglect his children, and he was like, oh, that wasn't good. But like it was one of the things where he was just trying to finish his stuff, and with the time, because I think he had a job at that point, right? And it's like that's tough, and yeah, so I guess I don't know. I guess it depends on who you are, but don't play with your children, please. It was just I didn't mean it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I'd like to say is I think what happens, I think the way this positively works out for you, if you're thinking to yourself, well, this sounds too difficult, and I have too much in the way, I don't want to sacrifice these things. I think the positive way to look at it as to how it can be, how to say what you just said, purely constructively, is you have to become more mature. That's what ends up being the thing that has to happen, right? Like, you have to be mature enough to be able to say, I'm not going to spend as many hours on YouTube, right? I'm not gonna, you're gonna have to cut. Like, if you want to have a child and have a family and still do all this stuff, that's amazing. But you're gonna have to grow up like extremely quickly under that pressure. And what you don't want that pressure to be is like something negative, right? You don't want to view your child as like, that's the thing that's stopping me from, that's terrible, right? But instead more like a reason to mature, if that makes sense, and put your priorities in order. Yeah,
I think a good technique that I'm using is just think about what is the consequence of not doing it, right? And do you want to live in a world where you didn't do it, essentially, by a certain time, really? Because the consequence of just not doing it is, it's hard because like without a time constraint, because it's sort of people tend to not live as if their life is finite, essentially. So if you put a very close deadline of, like, not very close, I mean, maybe within a couple of years, for example, and say, okay, the alternative is I will have to do this, for example. All right. For me, it's like, I have to go through like 3 more years of college. I don't want to be here. It costs a lot of money, costs a lot of time. It's a lot of stress. If I am able to become financially stable before then that's not required anymore. So, yeah. And also, I have to, work a job where it might not be pleasant, essentially. That's also a thing. But, yeah.
Makes sense to me. Cool. Mm-hmm. Is that it?
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Cool. Luckily, my segment's going to be really quick, very unstructured.
I thought this was the end. I forgot. I just kept going. I was getting ready for news.
Lols. No, I'm going to be very quick because I really just have like a big question mark when it comes to my topic. So I'm just going to reintroduce the podcast real quick. So welcome back to Mixed Media. We just heard from Ben and Nathan about their respective topics. Go back to our podcast list. We have playlists on YouTube. We have our different platforms on all the streaming platforms you could possibly think of, all the ones that Ben trashed a moment ago, probably. But yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, you should have a guilty conscience. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you should listen to those things because I think both of those were extremely important talks. And what I'm about to talk about are just random thoughts on one particular film. So if you're looking for the most meaningful discussion, definitely listen to the last 2 episodes from this week. But today I will be talking about The Birds. And The Birds is a film by Alfred Hitchcock. Ben, did you end up watching any Hitchcock lately? Or
I rewatched North by Northwest, but I have not seen The Birds.
What were your, just out of curiosity, I wanted to know what you thought about it afterwards.
I think it's a really great film. You can see how it like impacts, influences James Bond and like, yeah. But it's a different kind of sonic world too. It's kind of cool because we're playing some Bernard Herrmann at a concert in next Tuesday. We're doing North by Northwest as part of that. So it's kind of cool to play that too after watching it. I don't know. It's an interesting film, and like basically I don't know. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, and as a sneak peek into a future episode that I'll probably do that requires me to do research and maybe even read a book, we'll find out if I'll put that much effort into a podcast episode. I'm just personally curious because I like films, so I might just do this for fun and then just relay back what I learn. But fun fact about North by Northwest is it might be somewhat factually based. There's some interesting stuff. I remember I watched the film and I saw Central Intelligence Agency appear on the screen and I lost my mind because I was like, huh, I had literally just learned about. I've read and like listening to interesting things about the CIA's infiltration of Hollywood, which kind of tied interestingly back into what Ben was talking about with music. And when I saw, I didn't expect that because I knew nothing about North by Northwest when I went into it, which is how I like to watch films. I just put it on, and I was like, I think this might be one of those films that the CIA enjoyed because of how fun it was of a portrayal of what is actually a reality, which is an interesting thing. But anyway, that's for a different episode. This episode, I'm going to talk about The Bird. So Alfred Hitchcock is kind of an interesting director for me because I feel like, I've watched 4 or 5 of his films at this point. I only have 1 film left in my little library to enjoy, all physical copies, by the way. I understand. I feel like I understand him a lot better because I had heard a lot from his words, his quotes, and what people have learned from him, but I hadn't actually watched him, right, which is a completely different thing. And I feel like I clicked with a lot more than I expected to. I clicked a lot more with the writing, I think, than I expected to, because I think that is underrated part of a lot of his stuff, although North by Northwest is probably a weaker example of that. My favorites are definitely Psycho and Vertigo are just tremendous films, to me in a different category than the rest of the films I watched. But anyway, The Birds. The Birds is a sort of thriller horror thing. And it's, I forgot to put the title up. The Birds. There we go. As you can see, for those who are watching on video or on podcast, this will be the episode art. We've got a poor woman being attacked by birds. This is the plot. This is what happens in this film. Fairly simple concept. It's apparently based off of a book, although my understanding is that it was inspired by a book. The script was written based off the book. Then eventually, it just the actual relation to the book just collapsed, and they just retained the name. The book's on the screen. It's funny. So it's an interesting film in the sense that it has a very simple concept, and it's trying to do a lot technically speaking for its time. In terms of special effects and all this other stuff. And it seems like an experiment in a lot of different things, one of which is the music, of which, and this is up Ben's alley pretty much, of which there is none. There's no music. Like when I say none, I mean there's not a single note of music in this film. And I think that was an egregious error. It was such a strange feeling. I was watching, I was like, it's just something, the pace, something is just, I realized there wasn't music, but I was like, but that can't just be the only reason that this just feels completely wrong. I've watched plenty of films with no music in it or very sparse or spare music. And, those films feel like they're designed that way, right? Maybe they still would have been better with music. You could make the argument depending on the film. But largely speaking, it still feels like the choice was more deliberate, whereas here it just feels kind of flippant. Like for no reason, he just decided not to put music in this film, whereas in the other films, he has plenty and plenty of music. So I found that strange. So I looked it up, and I wanted to know why he didn't put music in. Apparently, it's exactly what I said. It was an experiment. He just wanted to know what would happen. Which it kind of goes into like this whole, discussion about experimenting and stuff like that. Like, okay, that's interesting. So he's trying to learn something.
Like watch the movie without the music and be like, this is not good though, right? And then just add the music. Not that it's easy to add music, but it'd be possible,
So some people I noticed in reviews, I've noticed a few reviews on Letterboxd and a few analyses elsewhere where people will say that the lack of music makes it more creepy. I don't know if I actually agree with that. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock's whole thing is terror, right? Like this tension. And in his other films, there's plenty of music and there's plenty of tension, I mean, if you watch Psycho, that thing is like, for being what it is, it's a kind of a white knuckle film, Vertigo has sections that are just, worse in terms of tension, and how much you're being sucked into the film than like, a spy thriller or something. It's just so intense, and, it's bizarre because people will say this makes it feel creepy, and I just don't see why. And I would like to understand better why people think that. I'm not dismissing it. I just want to understand why, because for me, it just felt empty. And I think one of the biggest differences between this and other films that have not as much music is this one's soundscape in general does not feel like it's telling a story. Like, not just the music, but the entire soundscape doesn't feel like it's telling its own story. When you're a filmmaker, you're very multidisciplinary. So every tool you've got, and even the act of choosing not to use the tool, right, is an act of trying to tell a story. And so I want all those decisions to feel deliberate. That's one of my critiques about like Marvel movies with their cinematography, right? It's very sterile and expository, right? It's effective for getting the gist of for most films, right? The gist of the action, right? It's not really as purposeful. Well, most of that's because it's not even practical to make a Marvel movie that way. It's already insanely bloated as is. I can't imagine trying to do some very creative shots in the middle of the production schedule, which, whatever. That's just the casualty in the Marvel franchise. Elsewhere, though, in Hitchcock, his cinematography is extremely deliberate. His dialogue, extremely deliberate. His story structure, extremely deliberate. Everything's super deliberate most of the time. And then with the birds, he just throws out the music and it just feels flippant, right? At least to me. So I would like to know, any Hitchcock fans out there, I would like to know, you can put it in the comments or you can send us an email at mixedmediapodcast@outlook.com or join our Discord or wherever. And just tell me what you think about The Birds, because I think it actually has a more polarized reception than people give it credit, because it's kind of in the Hitchcock canon, because Hitchcock made 1,000,000,001 films, but there are certain films that are like, the Hitchcock films, and The Birds is one of them. And I'm not sure that it's actually as universally loved in the way that his other films are loved. Just by reading reviews and like looking at what people say, it seems as though people like this for its classic nature more than they do for its like, like how it holds up, even today, right? It's like more of like, this is a interesting film in cinema's history, right? This kind of goes into like your rating philosophy, because some people include impact into the wider, field as something that's important to them when they assess how much they like something, right? How much they want to praise it. And I can understand that, because this film was made insanely. I mean, when I say insanely, I mean probably immorally. I mean, they literally had tons of birds on set, trained to attack people. They put food in people's hair and other parts of their clothing so that the birds would attack the actors, literally. I mean, they were trained that they didn't hurt them, but people still got hurt, is my understanding. So it's an insanely made film, and a lot of those scenes with the birds and the bird attacks are extraordinarily, has that Hitchcock tension over it. For being such a simple concept, you get some really, jarring and exciting moments. But I think I just was like, overall, I think the film was better than average. I'm not trying to, hate on the film or anything like that. I don't hate it at all. It's more like, I think the story could have been not just slightly above average. I think it could have been, up there with his average works, right? If there was music. And I think Bernard does his music for all of his like big films or something like that.
I think every film that I'm aware of, all of his big films. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I think when I was watching Psycho in particular, I was noticing a lot more of that sort of like Mickey Mousing that you were talking about in prior episodes. This is why I love this podcast. I learn things and then I apply them when I watch things, so that's awesome. But and it was good. It was still good. There's nothing wrong with it. Like it was excellent. Not only excellent, but it filled the spaces in a way that it told its own story. The music told its own story alongside the story. So yeah, I just thought it was bizarre. And I think it was a failed experiment. I found, interestingly enough, I put a link on their Discord, someone who attempted to score the film if it had a score. And of course, this person didn't have an orchestra play their score or anything like that. It's all electronic. But if you imagine past that, if you imagine what this person put together past that, I don't think it was like, anything insane. It just was better already just because it was there, and like these scenes where like the two main characters who have this like love tension thing going on, this will she, won't she, will he, won't he kind of dynamic going on. It's just so weird in those scenes where they're staring at each other and you get these long cuts to just not hear anything that sounds like it comes from their hearts. It's just strange. Like, it doesn't feel right. And
it's
just
strange too because Herman has such strong love themes in his other Hitchcock films.
Yeah, no, exactly. Very odd. And all you're hearing, she's paddling across the ocean, and all you're hearing is like the sparse, like the soundscape is not even fully developed, which I'm not even sure I can say that's a technical problem. I just don't get it. But the whole soundscape is kind of sparse, so all you're hearing is like the kerplunks of her oars go through as she's looking across the bay, and she sees her man or future man across the bay, and it's shot beautifully. The film looks gorgeous, like the landscape, at least the way it was reproduced in my copy, was pretty freaking gorgeous. It was very painterly. Part of that's because they actually use matte paintings for set extensions, but it blends seamlessly, and you get these longing like close-ups back and forth, and you're hearing just kerplunk, kerplunk, kerplunk. It just kind of takes you out of the vibe. If you could hear the water moving and maybe the rustles of maybe if the soundscape could tell the story better, even if you didn't want to use music, right? If the environment could tell you the story of their love or their potential thing that's going on, this tension there, right? And at least that would help, but it's just kind of empty. It's just like, okay, in scenes that have no terror, right? The scene's literally just about this relationship. Why on earth would you want to make it sparse? I don't want to be creeped out in this moment. That's not even what he's going for, right? So, yeah, it's kind of strange. So anyway, that's my topic. Okay. News?
Yeah, I have news. I actually have news this time. Prepared.
Cool.
So, one of the interesting questions in the video industry is what is copyrightable? So specifically, if I play some game and I record it, am I infringing on copyright if I publish that video and stuff like that? So, the Battlestate Games, who is the developer of Escape from Tarkov, issued a DMCA claim against a YouTuber named BlueDrake42, who is, big enough where it made a splash, 419,000 subscribers as of now, and took down a video where he was talking negatively about the game. They've done this before. They took down, I'm reading a Polygon article, took down at least 47 of some guy named Iraq Tix videos via DMCA claims over some weekend, and all of them are Battlestate said that quote, the reason why we acted so strong and so quick is that we had to stop this misinformation about the data leak. And right now, we are reviewing all the videos which were copyright strikes. If we find those videos have no issues with the law and with negative rhetorics, we might call back our strikes. So essentially saying that we actually don't care about what the legal thing is. We just don't like that they're saying anything negative. Because, you know, a DMCA claim is not for negativity. It's for copyright problems, I think. So it's very strange. It's happened before, or it's happened many times, but it happened before to PewDiePie, the game called Firewatch, where I believe this is, let's see, I believe the video was taken down on his channel, maybe, at least it was threatened to. And yeah, it's like, I don't know what the legal precedence is for this, actually. Like, is this like something that's been taken to court? Like, is this like what? Is this actually?
I'm not even going to start on this. This is a topic I know probably too much about because it drives me insane. So I'm not going to comment too much. But really, Section 230 gives them blanket immunity in the way that the courts have interpreted it.
Gives
for a while now.
Gives
the platform.
Okay, so what you're saying is that what you're saying the YouTuber is not liable for anything? Like, is they're good or?
No. I'm saying what it sounds like, right, is that the claim was made by the game studio, right? Is that what you're saying? To the platform, right?
I believe so. I believe it's using I assume using YouTube's DMCA system.
Okay, yeah. So then the platform just executes it probably rotely, right? Like no one reviewed it, I'm sure. It's probably some bot or something.
This article has a link to, it says like post on Eroctic's Twitter account indicates that, and then it has linked at least 47 of his videos had DMCA claims. So I went to click on the link to see the proof of the 47 videos. The thing is, when I open the Twitter link, it's not even his account. Oh. It brings me to, it is actually twitter.com/ErocticGaming, but it seems like the account was hacked or bought out or something, because currently the current owner is called Clash of Kings Hack Online Tool, which seemingly sells hacks for some game. So I'm going to assume his account was nefariously stolen. So the tweet no longer exists. But yeah, I wish I could see whether it was through the like YouTube message him or if it was directly from Battlestate Games. Well, it said, I assume, well, it says like the videos were taken down. So I don't know. I mean, would he have taken down the videos himself? I don't know. Yeah.
No, why would he do that? It sounds like he was forced.
I assume that YouTube just took it upon themselves to take it down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a bot. And in terms of like, what he can do about it, you can try to sue the studio, maybe for some like, I mean, there's probably like he might be able to like, it depends on how much time and money and he wants to spend on a case, but he might be able to sue the studio for like tortious interference or something like that, or like something about basically unfair business relations that they got in between him and the platform from enjoying a fruitful relationship unjustly, without good faith. So that he might have a case, something like that. I'm sure there's plenty of other laws that I don't know about that might apply, but it's really tough. It's really tough. I mean, has he asked for his content back from YouTube? 'Cause I'm surprised they wouldn't just put it back up if it was yes.
This entire article doesn't say a single thing. Like, it doesn't quote Eroctic at all. It just quotes Battlestate Games. I don't know. Like, okay. I don't know how he felt about this. Oh, it says they've reached out for him for comment at the end. That doesn't say anything else. So I assume he just never responded or didn't want to respond. Oh. And also, I'd like to point out, interestingly enough, for Firewatch and the PewDiePie thing, they took it down for a video that wasn't even they took down, they promised to, at least on their Twitter, they said, we are following DMCA, take down PewDiePie's Firewatch content and any future Campo Santo games. That's the development studio. They took it down for something that he said they didn't like, that wasn't even in any of those videos. Which is strange.
Yeah, they can have fun with the lawfare there.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have news?
Yeah, so we haven't talked at all about streaming royalty. Today we're talking about streaming for music, like music streaming platforms. But there's a whole separate issue of royalties and earning money for TV shows and movies that are on streaming platforms like Netflix. It's a really complicated issue that at some point requires us to go into as well. But some news related to that, one of the big performing rights organizations, which are responsible for distributing royalty payments to composers, ASCAP, or American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. So it's one of the big three ones in America. They announced last week that they are effective immediately increasing streaming royalties to anyone who is part of their TV premium royalty plan. And that's generated a lot of discussion because it sounds really good, but it's very vague as to what exactly is happening, because the announcement that was just that, well, we're doing this effective immediately, and absent an agreement with streaming services to give more money in royalties, which obviously has not happened, and that's just contractually they're not obligated to for a whole bunch of reasons, which we can discuss in a future episode. But absent that, the only way that they can give more money to people who are on the premium plan, right? You have got generally people who are big names who have some kind of big hits out there. And the only way that they can do that is that to take streaming royalty money away from somewhere else in order to give these people who are the big names more money for their streaming things that are being streamed. And so that's generated a lot of discussion because there's absolutely no clarity as to how that's going to happen, whether they're going to be taking more money from the less established names who are doing smaller things in order to give more money to the bigger names, or whether they're doing something else. So on the surface, it's a really great announcement, and everyone is unanimous that it would be great if every performing rights organization would just generally increase more streaming money to everyone. So hopefully it's a start of something good, but it's very vague at the moment as to how exactly it's going to work and whether any lesser composers are going to be losing out in favor of larger composers.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. Definitely interesting. Cool. And for me, I posted this on our Discord as well, link in the description. But Disney just settled with Scarlett Johansson, which I thought was hilarious and completely unnecessary, and a complete error on their part, because they should have just handed her the money when she started complaining and then moved on with their lives. For whatever reason, they thought that they, may be able to PR their way out of it, which I don't understand why they would think that. I mean, she seemed pretty clear that she wanted her money. Then she sues them formally, and they get even more mad on social media, which gets all the ScarJo fans mad, gets a bunch of Marvel people even more disillusioned with Marvel, which is not good for them. And then they end up just settling out of court, which I'm 100% sure they at least gave her the money that she was owed, or gave her some sort of deal in terms of percentage of Disney Plus or something. They definitely gave her a significant amount of money. We will not know because is a non-disclosure agreement between the parties about the settlement terms, which is almost always the case, especially when there are large sums involved, because Disney doesn't want to advertise its massive loss for other people to come after them. So yeah, I think that's funny. The other thing is, wow, inflation has become insane. So this is great prediction. I keep tooting my own horn, but it's also because it's important information too. So if you go back to some episode way back yonder, I was talking about inflation. It's still relevant, entertaining information. I'll put it that way. It's not advice. It's entertaining information. You can go back to that video about at least learn what I'm doing to hedge against inflation. It's been working really well for me. It's getting to the point where there may be nowhere to run, and it might be too late to use some of the strategies. You have to do your own research, but it's just incredible because I remember in that stream I had said 10% would be insane to see, but it's possible, depending on how things shake out, because this has never happened before. And we have, I think what I said about the Fed also became very prescient as well, because basically everything they've said didn't happen. The inflation numbers are not reliable. I'll put it that way. The calculation, you can literally just open their white paper and look at it. The calculation, the way they run the calculation changes practically every time they release the CPI numbers, because they say, oh wait, but we should account for this because it's not as bad in this sector. So let me just add this sector real quick, which kind of dilutes the numbers. And so we're seeing some economists quote CPI numbers at like 15%, like in a month over month, depending. I mean, groceries are up. I shop groceries, so I know this firsthand. Groceries are up like 30% year on year. So that's insane. So, and it's not stopping. And there's a lot of hopium that's holding everything together, right? There's a lot of let's just ride the wave. Let's just ride through this. And hopefully the hopium will get us through the constant shuttering of the economy. I would say that's great. And the hopium is helping me as well in a way. But also be responsible financially if you're in a vulnerable situation like me. I'm in an extremely vulnerable situation because I'm self-employed. I just started my business. Started my business in the middle of the pandemic practically, in terms of quitting my job and everything. So, just protect yourself if you're in a vulnerable position, especially. I gotta say that. I think that might be it. The last thing I want to say is there's a actual legitimate suit happening. Marvel gets sued all the time. There's one that's actually interesting right now because it may get past the motion to dismiss, which for a lot of these cases is really hard to get past for a variety of reasons I won't explain. But which means it'll actually go to trial, which means if it goes to trial, which companies like Disney want to avoid pretty much at all costs, they'd actually rather pay out the settlement than they'll go out to trial, not because of the cost of trial, although that is a factor, but because of discovery, right? So discovery allows you to peek into people's emails and release things to the public, and Disney would rather not do that because they can't control that process. So so that case might actually go to discovery, and it's about rights over several Marvel Marvel characters, and it has to do with the way Marvel did deals in the way past about the IP of their different superhero characters. To give it a very short overview, maybe I'll put a link to some explanation. I'll find a semi-good explanation somewhere, and I'll put a link to it in the description probably. But the gist of it is that Marvel's relationship to the writers of those characters is not that of an employer. So it was that of a contractor. Not really, there's actually a different word for it, but to simplify it, a contractor basically. And that seems to be extremely provable. And a lot of these people who are, or the one person I think it's the writer of, I can't remember, but the one person who is suing for rights over that entire character's property. So that's a big deal. I can't remember what it is. It might be like Spider-Man and one other character or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the idea that other people who own the IP to the other characters might come out and sue Marvel and try to grab rights to everything is not nominal at this point. So It's very interesting. So if this era ends because of lawfare, that'd be insane. That would be unexpected on my behalf. I didn't know any of this until I started looking into it, and I was like, huh, interesting. Or they may not succeed because they're big, or because they actually have a case. So we'll see.
Kind of, I mean, I don't know any video. I'm just hearing about this the first time, but it kind of reminds me of, and I don't really know what has happened in the legal world, regarding this, since I heard about it a while ago. But there's some issue with a lot of the expanded universe writers in Star Wars, who noted that they're not making the money that they're supposed to make, because Disney, although they don't publish any more expanded universe stuff, they've rebranded it all as Legends, and they still run print copies of it for you to buy, and also I guess probably virtual copies as well. And basically, in particular, the guy who did a novelization of the first movie and then did a couple other books later, if ahead of the lawsuit against Disney, claiming that Disney did not respect, Disney didn't get to terminate the contract that they had with Lucasfilm when they bought Lucasfilm, and they're not paying him royalties on his republications of his own work.
You think this would be so simple, right? Like, how much money in the grand scheme of things do they have to pay these people? But I don't know why I can't understand the mindset. I just know it happens, for whatever reason it happens. I don't understand it. Like, it's not that much money probably in the grand scheme of what they're doing at Disney to pay these authors royalties, but I don't know. Can't really get it. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, this is the same company that was allowed to acquire Fox, which is a big... I could probably do a whole episode on that, although it's not as relevant for obvious reasons it went through. There are a lot of problems with that decision. You have is the same company that also is allowed to continue to use the rights to Mickey Mouse, despite there being no compelling reason other than that they make money off of Mickey Mouse, which is not a reason under the law to keep the rights to Mickey Mouse. It's insane. I mean, it's been renewed 4 times or something like that at this point. So how do you do that? I'll leave your imagination to think about how Disney can pull off convincing people with their massive size that Mickey Mouse ought to be exclusively theirs forever. So yeah. All right. With that was a great episode of Mixed Media. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, all links are in the description if you're curious as to where to find us. We're on Instagram, Discord, all podcasting platforms. We do our video versions on YouTube and Twitch live, and we do we post the final versions on all the platforms, including Rumble. If you're on Rumble, we love you. Great audience over there. I'd love to hear you guys comment more. Got one recently who said nice. I like that, but I kind of need more than that. We would love to see you guys on our other platforms where we can talk to you throughout the week. And most importantly, recently, mixedmedia.locals.com. You actually join there for free, but the lowest tier, I might do this tonight or tomorrow morning, is going to be that live whiteboard that you've been seeing change throughout the episode. If you're on audio only, we have a live whiteboard if you want to join us live. You get access to that for life, which is pretty cool. If you ask me, I think that's pretty cool. And you'll help us to get on Rumble live as well. So if you're on Rumble, I think that's an incentive. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Cool. Yeah, we'll see you next week, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye.